poems from my book, which I'm going to plug shamelessly here. There are some copies here on sale, $15. I'll sign it for you. It came out last summer. So I thought I'd start with the title poem. It's called Fleeing Back. And it has to do, I spent many years living overseas, and coming back to the States was actually a very difficult transition, much more difficult than going away. It's probably still actually an ongoing process, transitioning even now. So this is kind of about that. It's called Fleeing Back. Floating down the Mekong, leaving behind Chiang Mai, the petrol smells and crabs hawked in the streets, the starting point of floating rafts and elephants and trails that end in temple bells, poppy fields, and rice paddies. I climb tier after tier of green, watery shafts of plant shoots and mud that capture the morning fog in spirals and plumes, waft moisture toward awakening into morning in New Jersey. Somewhere a Buddha laughs. I curl back into the mattress, wrap myself around the spirals of that dream, hoping to reclaim the water around my knees, floating back down the Mekong, clinging to that raft. New Jersey. Once I longed for home, the Atlantic, the sand of South Jersey beaches, the boardwalk under my feet, pitch pines, and the stark acidity of the barrens. Now, I want desert sand, broken coral, mud brick ruins, palm trees, and jungle green, the Red Sea, the Aegean, or even a river that runs through countries dividing opium fields and mountains. How quickly I have grown tired here, how familiar this life, how comfortable, how impossible. The next poem I'm going to read to you, since so many of you folks will all know all the references here. When I read this poem in Lancaster, they kind of look at me oddly. Although you'd be surprised how many people know about Lucy the Elephant. It's a little scary. This is called Marine Quaz, and it starts with a quote from a book by William Least Hate Moon. His book is called Roads to Quaz and American Mosey. It's a great book if you haven't read it. And so the quote is his definition of the word quaz, which is a noun, both singular and plural, referring to anything strange, incongruous, or peculiar, and its heart is the unknown, the mysterious. It rhymes with Oz. Marine quaz. The kelp is crinkled along the tide line, the waves cast-offs. The ocean foams at the edges, but the jetty rocks push back its passion. In Margate, New Jersey, Lucy the Elephant's ass points downtown with her tail in mid-shift. Piles of tiny black mussels stink up the beach. The gulls are ecstatic. The lifeguards can only see where the bodies drift above the surface. The pure, clear jellyfish are dead, but still make our skin itch. The word conch sounds like an insult even for a crustacean. No one likes broken clamshells. The gulls scatter them extravagantly all over the beach. Quahogs are to mussels as field mice are to rodents. Out of water, a starfish feels like a cluster of limp dicks in the hand. The ice cream man rings his bell from the bulkhead. Seagulls circle above him. That wave is rolling with an Italian ice cup and a popsicle stick. There's a sailboat out there somewhere. Maybe the currents will bring it close to our side of the horizon. The lifeguards don't know they are watching us drown. This one's called Betrayals. The sad plastic camels, baby Jesus and Mary, are crooked. Joseph has fallen, and the lawn is puddled with grassless spots as if infected with mange. Too much rain this year. The small two-story cluster of apartments is drowning in gray sky. New Jersey in winter. Far away, a giant wave has consumed the coastlines of several continents and more. Jesus is covered in mud. My neighbor washes him off before packing him away. In the box, the plastic figures huddle together so tightly. When she pulls them out again next year, her leavings from the divorce she just filed, they will be cracked and dented from the pressure and weight of so much piled on top, box after box, wrapped in duct tape, shoved far to the back of the closet, the years' accumulations packed tightly, stacked together, rising to a crest as she sifts through the artifacts of betrayal. This poem I'm going to read. I'm sure many of you here are familiar with Peter Murphy's Poetry Getaway, Cape May Getaway. Peter always has a table, or at least he used to. I confess I haven't been there since it left Cape May, I'm sorry. But there used to be a table there in that big room, and he would put all these literary magazines and things on there. And so, at this particular getaway I was attending, I was sifting through those magazines and came across a couple of old, and I mean really old, issues of Stockpot. And I'm sure there are some of you Stockton graduates here. Stockpot was the literary magazine from Stockton. And one of those issues was one I had, again, I told you it was old, had submitted, had a couple of poems in there. And again, it was old even then. So after reading that poem that I had written, it was a poem I had written for a classmate of mine and friend who was killed on the line of duty. He was an LAXA cop, and there may be some of you who remember Peter Hager. And I had written that poem at the time, published it in Stockpot. It was very nice because his parents had seen it and sent me a little note thanking me for it. So this poem is called After Finding a Poem I Wrote for You Years Ago. In more than 2 decades since your death, I don't think much of you anymore. I have lived, Peter, and well or not well, it all blurs now. The way starlight and moon often did when I drove too fast at night along a German Autobahn, too free of speed limits, full of being foreign and strange in an almost familiar place. My chest, too, is a mess of wounds, but I've healed. My body is not empty and abandoned. I am filled with more sins than you ever grew to know, and I have loved them all. I have lived too close to the zone of separation, crossed back and forth between Serb and Muslim territories, living with NATO troops by a small town of no remorse, mass graves, and other war crimes. I have wandered the streets of Bangkok, a woman alone at 3 a.m., drunk, acting only as witness. I swear these have nothing to do with you. I think I finally settled into my 40s, in a job anyway, and a place, committing myself to hundreds of students whose lives pass quickly through mine, but long enough for me to turn with them and point to another direction. It's all I have to give and never enough. Like the carnations we laid on your coffin, like the poem I wrote then, like this poem over 20 years later, a handful of rice tossed on your grave. This one, allergies been really bad. This one is called Just Because. Just because your sister was mashed into bone and meat fragments, smeared across a road, and what was left of her car, you cannot sleep at night until every neighbor's car is parked in the driveway or on your street. Every voice next door is accounted for, every email has been answered, and every important letter and piece of business is done and ready for everyone else to go on if you meet a truck on the road and it kills you. Some of your neighbors lie awake at night listening for termites and carpenter ants and powder post beetles boring through wood and the impact of flesh against bone from the house down the street and the cat-like howls screeching for police because one neighbor long ago watched his father beat his mother to death, and now he hears the clicking of coffin latches shutting out all finality of touch, and he knows there are only termites and maggots left finally to embrace us, and all he has left is a rage to stamp all the insects out. The man who manages the liquor store 5 blocks away and snaps your credit card through his machine without ever cracking the plastic or the number lies awake at night until his 16-year-old daughter sneaks quietly into her room, not realizing the last step at the top of the stairwell always creaks at the exact moment she thinks she has made it safely back. He dreams of a darkness so brittle it has already shattered, and the molecules of glass shred his lungs so he can't breathe. And he wakes rasping for air and the comfort of knowing exactly where everyone he loves is precisely. But there is really only a dark house for all of you, and the shallow relief of the alarm, sunrise, a pot of coffee, and a car engine warming up in someone's driveway the way it always has every morning you have lived here, no matter the weather or the day of the week, or even if that neighbor actually has a job or anywhere else to drive to.